Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 25 of Monorail Memoirs. What we miss most about Disney in the 2000s. Things have changed quite a lot over the last 20 years. As you can appreciate, Disney is still a publicly traded company. It has shareholders. The CEO has fiduciary responsibilities. It could be argued that the previous CEO was removed due to his lack of share price increasing. So we have to accept that Disney is a money making company. However, there used to be things that were either free, that were either included just in general, or is now a paid service that don't exist anymore. And so we have to really wonder whether or not it was possibly better back then, or if we're just looking back with rose tinted glasses. We'll get into things very shortly. But before we do that, as always, Lauren, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You might notice a bit of change of scenery. We're actually doing some work downstairs, so I can't film down there. So here is my lovely green bedroom.
I didn't realize you were doing work, so that's good. I hope. I mean, let's face it, I haven't visited yours in quite a while because we live about 5,000 miles apart. But nevertheless, due to the wonderful world of the internet, we can still connect and do this sort of thing for our own entertainment, I am sure. But let's start talking about things then that have changed. And one of the things I want to mention straight off the bat when we think about Disney 20 years ago to Disney compared to now is Fastpass. So Fastpass used to be a physical ticket. You would have to go to the ride, put your put your put your park ticket in, and you would receive a little paper copy with a return time. That has now been completely replaced by Genie Plus. It's been completely replaced by individual Lightning Lane, which of course that portion is a paid service that is not included anymore. It used to be just something that was a given. It was part of the ticket. It was really fun. Now you shouldn't have run around and push the children to the far end of the park to go and get tickets, to then come back and make sure the entire group had fast passes. Is that what we did? Of course. Have I been told off for running a few times? Yes, I have. They don't like you running in Disney parks. We did a whole podcast episode on fast pass early on in our tenure at Monorail Memoirs. So if you are interested in more detail about that, please feel free to go and have a look. But yes, the idea that you now have to pay for an individual Lightning Lane, or you pay for the premium Genie Plus service, it's not as friendly as it used to be. It's not as accessible as it used to be. And for me personally, I'm doing less running because I don't have to get to the far end of the park, but it does require a greater degree of planning, unfortunately. Laurie, I know you wanted to talk about the sort of infrastructure and architecture at the time because it was a little bit different. So talk us through what sort of things were different in 2000.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we know that the colour of the castle has changed and it's changing back, which is quite exciting. And I think the main thing for me was, yeah, exactly. The people call it the Epcot Globe, but basically Spaceship Earth. It used to have the Mickey's hand, the Sorcerer Mickey hand with the red kind of cape on, a wand, and lovely Epcot next to it. I mean, it did have 2,000 there. That was taken off, I believe.
Correct.
But this was kept up for quite a while, and I loved it. I felt like it really brought the Disney into the park, because Epcot wasn't the most Disney-ish park. And I mean, it's not meant to be, I get that, but it kind of injected that little bit of Disney, that little bit of Walt and Mickey and all that sort of stuff into the park for me.
Also, I have a couple of points here, and one is a really fun little fact. I don't know if you'll be able to see on this image, but at the top of the wand, there is a little red light, a little red flashing light. The reason for that is because any structure over 200 feet this is according to Florida, well, it could be FAA regulations, but it's certainly true in Florida. Any building over 200 feet has to have a red flashing light on it for low flying aircraft, such as helicopters, for example. So what they managed to do is they managed to sort of hide it in there, but it is actually on the top. It is prominent. So the top of the wand on the Epcot ball, like when it was sort of in the early 2000s, did have this little red flashing light, which I think is quite fun. One of the things actually that you can see on this image, sort of in the foreground, you can see these sort of obelisk style pictures. This was a horrific idea that we don't miss about Disney in the 2000s that we'll discuss further on a different episode. But Lauren, how would you describe the brutalist architecture that we had at the front of Epcot?
Tombstones. That is kind of the vibe, really. And it just had like people's pictures on that was kind of etched into some sort of metal, and they were put onto there. I believe, was it something to do with the millennium or something like that?
Yeah, so people could pay, and I can't remember how much it was, but you could either get text or you could get a sort of an etched outlined image of yourself or somebody else. You could have up to 2 or 3 of you, I think it was. And the idea is that it was going to be memorialized in front of Epcot. It was a quick cash grab scheme. It was a terrible idea, and it looked awful. That is something that we don't miss. But staying in Epcot for a second, I do think so. Epcot now has changed significantly. Epcot now is this just constant IP grab. When you think about Frozen, that's been thrown in there just randomly. I mean, they've sort of loosely linked it to Scandinavia and went, well, close enough. When you think about Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a great attraction, but has got nothing at all to do with Epcot. They try to, in the pre-show, they try to make it somewhat loosely aligned. I just think before the actual overhaul that started sort of 2019, Epcot, to me at least, felt more like what I think Epcot was intended to be. And I wish to just take a pause here. I'm not talking about the Epcot that Walt had as the experimental prototype of community of tomorrow that was going to be a living city where people worked, etc. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the education, entertainment side of Epcot that it used to be, as where now. I mean, I remember when we had interventions and the music as well just seemed to be far more. And I don't know if it's because I was younger then. I don't know if it's in 20 years' time somebody else will have a podcast talking about Epcot now and how the nostalgia for it now, but I just don't quite see it. With that said, though, Epcot, of course, wasn't the only place that had a bit of an architecture overhaul. There was another one as well. And Lauren, do you want to take us through whatever the heck this is?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit like Marmite, Vegemite, wherever you are in the world. But I absolutely loved this. So this is in front of the Chinese Theatre in Hollywood Studios, and it was a beautiful centerpiece for you to walk down that main strip. And I know that the Chinese Theatre's there now, and it looks great and it's fine. But for me, as you can see at night, it just looks fantastic. The Sorcerer's Hat. I mean, I know that you and a lot of other people have very different opinions, but for me, it was really kind of iconic for Hollywood Studios, and I really liked it. I mean, what they did with it, the actual underneath of the hat, wasn't really exciting. It was just a little gift shop with little pins in and stuff like that, so that was a bit boring. But the actual structure itself, I felt, was a lovely centerpiece. I know that a lot of people will disagree with me, but I was really sad when they got rid of the Sorcerer Mickey hat.
What was really interesting about this, though, is yes, you had the Chinese theatre behind it. This became the symbol of Hollywood Studios. And it's weird to think that they got rid of the symbol of Hollywood Studios. Now, even if you didn't like it, I didn't like it. I thought the Chinese theatre was beautiful, and this was just slapped in front of it quite aggressively. Even if you think that this was an eyesore, it was still the park symbol, because previous to this, it was the Eiffel Tower that they ended up getting rid of as the backlot tour closed. So this became what was the depiction of Hollywood Studios. Is now mainly been replaced by Tower of Terror, is what they use. But you couldn't imagine in Animal Kingdom, for example, getting rid of the Tree of Life. Like, that is the symbol of Animal Kingdom. So in that sense, it's a little bit weird that they did get rid of it. But you're right, it was a gift shop. It was a glorified gift shop, which, yes, he would sometimes do little pop-up shows around the front of it, but I didn't rate it at all. And if I'm honest, I'm not really sure why anyone thought this was going to be a good idea. I thought it was pretty obvious from the beginning. It was going to be cluttered. It wasn't going to, it wasn't going to be this castle-style grab that people were possibly hoping for. I would find it quite disappointing, full stop. We've spent a little bit of time now complaining about various things, and allow me to assure you the complaining hasn't ended. For those who stayed on Disney property, there was something called Magical Express. So this only stopped sort of during the pandemic, but this was a complimentary bus service that would take you from Orlando International Airport to your hotel. There were some problems with it. It would go to various hotels. You might be the last drop off, but it was free, it was available, and it was regular. Like you would have it booked ahead of time. All of that was fantastic.
And not only that, the magic started there. You didn't have to kind of finagle and get about, and you've just been on a long flight, especially if you're coming over from the UK or somewhere else in the world, a really horrible long flight. You just want to get into the magic because that's what you've paid for, and the magic starts as soon as you land. And so for me, I think that's one of the main things, the main draws to it is, they had like an animation thing on the TVs on the coach, and it felt like your holiday started there before you even got to the hotel. Now you have to get various other parts of transport, maybe an Uber, maybe if you want to shell out, get a minivan if you want that, but you don't get that free excitement now.
You're absolutely right, and it's been Mears, which is the company that actually ran Magical Express on behalf of Disney, is now basically doing the same thing, running Mears Connect, but you've got to pay for it, and it's like $25 per person per direction, which is going to get expensive because or you get an Uber, as you mentioned, which if you've got a family of 4, you've then got to worry about getting an Uber XL and everything that comes with that, and of course the surge pricing you'll get around times when it's busy and lots of aircraft are landing. Or you then get a rental car, which if that wasn't your plan, that's a whole different ballgame. And actually, an observation, I don't know if you've seen, the prices to park in Disney have gone up yet again.
Yes.
$35 a day. If you're not staying on a Disney resort, $35 a day. That is outrageous.
Yeah.
And I know that you want to talk about money, so we'll do that in a moment. There's just another one that I want to mention that I think is a kind of relevant, and it's about this sort of money crunching. It's about taking things away from people that used to be involved. If you stayed on Disney resorts, if you stayed in the Disney hotels, you used to have a lot more perks than you do now, which was, yes, okay, the deluxe resorts still get extra magic hours sometimes, but that they also don't know those are extended evening hours when everybody else has to leave the park. If you're in a deluxe resort, you can stay a little bit longer for a couple of hours. It does allow you to get a lot of stuff done, but it usually ends in a very late finish as well. But the extended evening hours is still a thing. But it used to be that moderate and value resort guests used to get sometimes early entry or late stay, and all of these are examples of perks that used to be included that have been taken away. Now, why have they been taken away? The pandemic changed a lot of stuff, but also the pandemic gave an excuse to change a lot of stuff that was valid in the time and then never came back.
Yeah.
And that's quite a difficult one. Now, Lauren, I know you want to talk about money and prices. So how have things changed since the 2000s?
Yeah, it has just got extortionate, hasn't it? I know that the cost of living has gone up and, with inflation and all that sort of stuff, but it's just way surpassed that. I think now for a Mickey Premium ice cream, it's like $6.57. That is for one ice cream.
Yeah, it was $6.50 last time I went, which was in when did I last go? Recently, because I just seem to do it all the time, I'm afraid.
It's just unbelievable, I think. It used to be $2 for an ice cream. So for a family of 4, it would be kind of $8. And you're like, $8, it can be a little bit pricey for just one ice cream each, but it's a treat. Whereas now you're shelling out over $20 for a little ice cream for a family of 4. It just becomes undoable. And I think that's where you think, where's that magic? You're getting all this money anyway. Just give us a cheaper ice cream, come on.
So something worth pointing out that I've just Googled because I think it is relevant. You're right in what you're saying. I just want to point out though that in late 2004, £1 was worth nearly $2.
Yeah, I remember
those days. Now £1 is about $1.30, and so You're right. Yes, the number that was on the price tag was less. There's, I'm not denying that at all. But also the context in which we, as British, were going on holiday to experience it, the price tag was cheaper because the exchange rate was more beneficial.
Yeah.
You're right though. I mean, a good example is a Dole Whip, which I don't like, but I did look into this. Was under $3, and now it's more than double. And that's an excessive amount. And for those who stayed on the Disney resorts, the Disney dining plan used to be a lot better than it is now. You used to get sort of free dining depending on where you're staying as part of the ticket price. Now, a lot of it is more of a paid add-on again, and the actual notion of free is very questionable. I do want to talk about a couple of things that just don't exist anymore. And the first one that I want to talk about is Disney Quest.
Oh, yes, Disney Quest.
So, Lauren, what is Disney Quest?
So Disney Quest was in what was called Downtown Disney, which is now called Disney Springs. That's something else that I miss, calling it Downtown Disney. And it was kind of like a gamer's spot, really. So you could go in with your ticket. You could use a day on your Disney ticket, and you'd go in and you'd just play loads of arcade games. There was some that was a bit like a bumper cars ride. There was a few kind of actual rides, but the main ones were kind of virtual reality, but like the very, very start of virtual reality, not like we know it now. It was all a little bit jumping, a little bit kind of, just not as smooth. But I absolutely loved Disney Quest. It was a fantastic day, especially if it was stormy. We used to go during stormy season, so some days were a bit of a write-off, and that was a perfect indoor place to go. And also, when we were getting a little bit older, kind of in our teenage years, Mum and Dad would leave us there because we knew that we were safe there, and they were like, right, we'll just meet you outside at such and such a time. And we were just kind of let to roam free, and it felt really good to have that independence as well. So yeah, I do have very fond memories of Disney Quest.
Yeah, so do I. I loved it. I to me, it was a key part of every holiday that we would do. As you mentioned, it was this sort of indoor virtual theme park, and we'll do an episode at some point digging into Disney Quest more, what it was, and also the Florida attraction, because I don't know if you know, there was more than one Disney Quest.
Yeah.
Which is a fun little tidbit, but it closed in 2017. It was replaced by the NBA Experience. That closed very quickly because they didn't read the room at all. But anyway, so that's an example of something that we missed from the 2000s. The other one, and the final one that I want to bring up, is Spontaneity. So now you've got the My Disney Experience app. You have to plan so far in advance to get your dining reservations. You have to plan so far in advance to get, I know they said Fastpass then, my goodness, to do your Genie Plus reservations. And it just means that it's becoming increasingly more difficult to just wake up in the morning and go, what do we want to do today? You can still do that, but you'll feel on the back foot. I have no intention of feeling on the back foot, because when you go to Disney, if you don't get to go regularly, you want to maximize the time that you've got there. And I just feel that the technology aspect that's been introduced to the park, it's been done for a variety of reasons. Disney would say it's ease. I think it's just more to do with being able to track trends and where people are and try and redirect traffic in different areas. It just means it's much harder now to have a spontaneous day in Disney.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that it also puts people who don't go regularly also on the back foot, because they're scrambling to try and plan and trying to think about, right, well, what are we meant to do? And it's this massive kind of anxiety provoking thing for people. You go out on holiday at the end of the day, you go into the magical place on earth. You don't want to have to be thinking about things 60 days in advance, but you just have to. It's the reality now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's true. So thank you for joining us in this sort of canter back in time of what we miss most about Disney in the 2000s. As always, if you do like this, please consider subscribing. Lauren will point to the ticker. Instagram and TikTok, which are things that Lauren does because I don't do them. If you do have anything, feel free to email us. Thanks, as always, for joining us on what is now episode 25. My goodness, we're getting through these. We will see you again next week, but until then, please stand clear of the doors. Bye everybody.